Honors, which is the second evening performance of Mr. Michael Walsh with his wonderful and very unique performance of the piano and the lecture on Liszt, and incidentally on Wagner. I'm with the Danube Institute, Deputy Director, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, our audience, for attending this evening. It's not the easiest place to find, but we're very grateful to the kind staff of the Bela Bartok Memorial Villa. This is the last home in which Bela Bartok lived, and we'll be hearing from Michael. Also, incidentally, at the end, he will perform a Bela Bartok piece. And now, to do the honors, I'd like to turn this program over to my colleague, Christina Sardi, who will be a part of the program this evening. Thank you, diplomatic community. Thank you, Bela Bartok staff. Thank you, Danube Institute staff, for arranging this great event this evening. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, our esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and good evening. Please don't forget to take off your phones. It is a great joy and an absolute honor to welcome you here at the Bartók Béla Memorial House, to whom we are truly grateful for hosting our exceptional event. How exciting to embark on a wonderful journey through time, place, and cultural heritage. However, every Odyssey needs a captain, and who better to guide us unscathed through the school and Charybdis of Franz Liszt's life than Michael Walsh. Mr. Walsh is an acclaimed author, a renowned critic, and a gifted musician who has a way of understanding music, its tie to a place and time, and the importance of it to us. The timing could not be more perfect. Just last weekend, we celebrated the 150th anniversary of the Hungarian Academy of Music that was founded by Liszt himself. Also, last Saturday, Richard Wagner's Lohengrin premiered at the Opera House, a piece that was conducted by Liszt at its first ever performance back in 1850. Liszt and Wagner, two geniuses of classical music, friends and family, their lives intertwined. But also the spirit of this house connects us to Bartók, who died 80 years ago and was a fervent advocate of Liszt's oeuvre. He even spoke about Liszt in his inaugural lecture at the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. Tonight, Michael Walsh brings us an evening of piano with his unique take on the background of its composers and how it transcends time to speak to us. So without further ado, please join me in giving him a warm round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Welcome. I wish I could speak words of welcome in Hungarian, but I practiced them last year, so I've forgotten them, unfortunately, but we'll try to do better next time. It's a great honor for me to be here and with you joining me. For a little boy from San Diego, California, and Honolulu, Hawaii, to all the way to Budapest to play in Bartók's own villa is quite an honor for me. I still can't quite believe that it's all happened the way it has, but I'm very happy to have you all here today to listen to me play. I mentioned yesterday, this is the beginning of a kind of resuscitation for me of playing in public. I haven't played in public for about 40 years. So at the tender age of 75, I decided to start a new career, which is playing in the piano, which I've been doing since I was 5 years old. So it's great to be back doing that. So we're going to talk about Liszt today, and really quickly, Liszt's vital measurements. He was born in 1811 in what's now Riding, Austria. Then it was part of the Hungarian, part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He grew up in Vienna, where he studied piano as a young prodigy with Carl Czerny, who was Beethoven's pupil. From Vienna, he went with his mother after the death of his father to Paris. So as a young man, teenager, he grew up in Paris. And this kind of got his life off to a start for him that he would follow throughout. He would live here, he would live there. He was always traveling. He was in a carriage. He was traveling all over Europe, all the way to St. Petersburg, Russia, in carriages in the mid-1830s, 1840s, during the high water mark of his virtuoso career. So in Paris, he acquired French, which was mostly his language in dealing with people. He preferred to speak in French. He kind of forgot his German, in fact, and so, which he had grown up speaking. He never did learn Hungarian. So he was then appointed as the Kapellmeister in Weimar after his concert virtuoso career was almost over, and there he premiered Lohengrin, as you just heard, which was a pivotal work of Wagner's. It was a time when Wagner was a political refugee. He was a wanted man across Europe for his role in the 1848 revolutions. And Liszt, although the two men, I don't think, really got along very well, but then what father-in-law gets along well with his son-in-law, let's face it. Wagner married Liszt's middle daughter, Cosima, and she later, as you all know, took over the Bayreuth Wagner Festival and ran it well into the 1930s. So she lived into her 90s, was a very significant figure in her own right as a impresario. So the daughter of Liszt, the wife of Wagner. Liszt found in Wagner something of his own spirit, which was political revolutionary, but at the same time, someone who very much liked the attention of crowned heads and titles. So Liszt, although he lived rather humbly, he did acquire a great many orders of this and orders of that, and was partly subsidized by the Grand Duke of Weimar himself while he was in Weimar. And at the museum here in Budapest, you can see many of these citations and awards. They're on the walls. In addition to which, there are 5 or 6, maybe more, of Liszt's pianos. So I want to say a word about his influence on the piano, especially for this evening. You can see this is a Steinway D. It's a concert grand. It's the biggest Steinway they make. And many, many great recording artists use this piano. But it wouldn't be here without Liszt. Liszt was starting his career on the small pianos of his day, mostly the French pianos, Pleyel and Erard. And he would literally pound them into dust. He would smash them. The legs would come off. They'd fall apart. They couldn't withstand the tremendous demands he made on the machinery of the instrument. So if you look in this instrument after we finish, you'll see this massive technological accomplishment of the mid to late 19th century with the strings and the frame and the soundboard and all of this stuff is all because Liszt demanded better instruments than he actually had. And he wrote pieces for instruments that did not exist at that time. So all the instrument makers had to up their game, and they all did. And they, as Liszt became very famous as the world's first traveling piano virtuoso, they competed with each other to build the best instrument and to have him play it. So it's kind of early brand adoption. Steinway built a piano for him, which, and for Wagner, it sits in Wagner's house to this day. If you go to Bayreuth and go to Wahnfried, Wagner's home, you'll see this bigger than this, enormous Steinway that they specially made for Wagner, but knowing that Wagner was related to Liszt. They were only 2 years apart in age, but Wagner was the son-in-law. Bösendorfer made pianos in Vienna, and every piano maker, many of whom are no longer in business, made pianos for Liszt. Hamburg Steinway and New York Steinway, the two branches of the Steinway family, each made pianos for Liszt. And he would endorse them if he played them. So it was a huge marketing thing. Also, Liszt is the first rock star ever. He is handsome. He's got a very distinctive sort of hawkish nose and long hair that he always wore down to his shoulders. And he was such a distinctive icon, literally, that he's painted everywhere. He was caricatured in the newspapers. There's millions of pictures of Liszt playing at the keyboard. I think one of my favorite depictions of Liszt is right here across from the conservatory. That statue of Liszt that's there with his fingers going like this, and he's wearing a priest's cassock, which we'll get to in a minute. He could move among countries essentially without a passport. Everyone knew who he was. It was obvious who he was. It's like seeing today some very distinctive looking celebrity that no one doubts who that person is. He worked in Weimar, as I mentioned. There he's championed music of the future, his own music, Wagner's music especially, but other composers who are now no longer remembered quite as well as they were in their day, such as Joachim Raff, who actually helped Liszt orchestrate many of his orchestral pieces. He said of himself, and later his daughter, Cosima, said of him, I threw a lance as far into the future as I could, near his death. So that what he did was shatter tonality. He stopped being the great virtuoso of the Hungarian rhapsodies, which are really gypsy melodies. He became very interested in folk music. Without Liszt, there's no Bartók. Without Liszt, there's no Messiaen. Without Liszt, there's no Schoenberg. There's no Berg. There's no Webern. There's no Second Viennese School. None of that comes without what he did in his pioneering works. When I go over the corpus of his works, I'm always in amazement at how, at the end, how dense it becomes. It's the late works, which we're going to hear tonight, are not played popularly the way the Second Hungarian Rhapsody is, for example, or the Spanish Rhapsody, or La Campanella, or any of the showy pieces. But they go places that nobody ever, like Star Trek. They go where no man has gone before. They take us into atonality. He writes a piece called Bagatelle Without Tonality at one point. He writes the first 12-tone melody. Well, you don't think of it as a 12-tone melody, but if you listen to the opening of the Faust Symphony, da-dee-da-dee-da-dee, bum-bum-bum-bum, it's a 12-tone melody, and the entire symphony is built out of that. Tonight we'll hear a piece built out of 4 notes. And to end, we'll hear a piece built out of 1 note. That's how dense he became at the end. But at the beginning, it went something like this. Thank you. That is the opening of the Transcendental Etudes, Etude number 1. It's very short, as you see, it's less than a minute. But in it, he throws everything that a pianist is going to face in one piece. He makes small, crabbed, little chromatic scale passages, big arpeggios at the end, the whole leaping chords. Liszt is able to do this. And I think this piece actually began as an improvisation, that he would just come into a room and play something. So it eventually evolved into this wonderful piece. It's called the Preludio. And then come all the famous transcendental etudes after that, including Mazeppa, which is one of the pianist's great challenges in the repertoire. Now we're going to leap ahead to one of his last pieces. And this is called Five Hungarian Folk Songs. At this point, Liszt has transcended his own transcendence. He's not interested in showing off anymore. He's just going to let you hear the music as unfiltered as possible. So I've asked my lovely and talented assistant to read the poems in Hungarian and English, and we'll follow each poem with Liszt's very short setting of each poem.
The first song. Csak titokban akartalak szeretni, de a szíved nem tudott titkolni. Nyílt titok lett a mi szerelmünk, mert a szemünk elárult minket. Titkos szerelem, édes titok, de a szívem már nem bírja sok. Ha meglátlak, ég a vérem, szerelmedben élek, halok én. I wanted to love you only in secret, but your heart could not keep it hidden. Our love became an open secret, for our eyes betrayed us. Secret love, sweet secret, but my heart can no longer bear it. When I see you, my blood burns. In your love, I live and die. The second song. Jaj, beszennyes az a maga kendője, talán nincsen szeretője. Adja ide, hadd mossam ki, úgy sem szeret engem senki. Kinek nincsen szeretője, menjen ki a zöld erdőbe. Írja fel a falevérre, hogy neki nincs szeretője. Oh, how dirty is your kerchief, perhaps you have no lover. Give it here, let me wash it. Anyway, no one loves me. Whoever has no lover, go out to the green forest. Write it on the leaves that you have no lover. The third song. Beszomorú ez az élet én nékem, nincs egy barátom, ki megsirasson. Csak a bánat van velem mindig, és a könnyem folyik éjjel-nappal. Szomorú vagyok, mint az őszi falevél, hullok alá a földre egyedül. Senki sem kérdi, mi bajom van. Csak a szívem fáj, szakad meg hamar. Oh, how sad this life is for me. I have no friend to weep for me. Only sorrow is always with me, and my tears flow night and day. I am sad like the autumn leaf, falling to the ground alone. No one asks what ails me, only my heart aches, soon to break. The fourth song. Bech, 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 jaj, de fáj a szívem. Szerelmes vagyok, de nem tudok mit tenni. Bech, szerelmem, bech, fájó a vágy. Szeretlek, de távol vagy tőlem már. Bech, elhagyott a boldogságom, csak a bánat marad velem egyedül. Alas, 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 oh, how my heart aches. I am in love, but I can do nothing about it. Alas, my love, alas, the longing hurts. I love you, but you are far from me now. Alas, my happiness has left me, only sorrow remains with me alone. The last song. Által mennék én a Tiszán ladikon, ladikon de ladikon. Ott lakik a galambom, ott lakik a galambom. Ott lakik a városban, a 3. utcában. Piros rózsa, kék ne felejts, ibolya nyílik az ablakában. Által mennék én a Tiszán, nem merek, de nem merek. Attól félek, hogy a Tiszába esek, Lovam hátán sejehaj, félrefordul a nyereg. A Tiszának habjai közt elveszek, a babámé nem leszek. I would cross the Tisza in a little boat, oh, in a boat. There lives my dove, She lives in the town, in the 3rd Street. Red roses, blue forget-me-nots, violets bloom in her window. I would cross the Tisa, but I dare not, oh, I dare not. I fear I would fall into the Tisa, fall into the Tisa. On my horse's back, hey-ho, the saddle slips aside. In the Tisa's waves I perish. I won't be my love's.
Beautiful, beautiful job. I mentioned that Liszt went to Paris, and one of the things he learned in Paris was, one of the things he discovered in Paris were girls. And he never lost his appetite for women for the rest of his life. His father once said to him as a young man, he was already very handsome and magnetic, "Women will be the ruination of you." And he was very nearly right, as you'll see from Liszt's biography. But Liszt came to prominence in Paris because rich ladies would have salons, to parties in which they could meet and socialize at the top levels, and they would often have a performer at these parties. So Liszt became known as a pianist in the salons of Paris. There were other players. Sigismund Thalberg, for example, became a kind of rival to Liszt in his early youthful virtuoso days. And in fact, later on, they actually had a duel, a pianistic duel. They each played at the same concert and left it up to the audience to decide who was better. And the consensus was that Thalberg was the greatest pianist in the world, and Liszt was the only pianist in the world. Well, at one of these soirees, Liszt met a woman who's slightly older than him. She was about 28 or 29, and she was the Countess Marie d'Agoult. She was married to a French count, much older man. She had 2 daughters with him, and she took one look at Liszt and ran off with him, literally. They eloped together. He was only 23 or 24. To Switzerland. She left husband behind, children behind. Off they went. They plotted it out. And we now know in retrospect that Marie appears to already have known she was pregnant by the time that they went to Switzerland. But they went to Geneva, which is not exactly a hotbed of sexual depravity, being the head of Calvinism in the whole world. But they enjoyed épater la bourgeoisie very much. They liked to shock people. They lived openly in sin. Marie, over the course of this relationship, over the course of the next few years, gave birth to 3 of Liszt's children, while she's still married to Count what's-his-name back in Paris. The children were birthed, Liszt acknowledged paternity, and then they were shipped back to Paris where Liszt's mother raised them. So Liszt's mother, Anna, became the de facto mother to his children while he was running around with Marie Deguy. This had results other than human. It had musical results. And what we're going to hear a lot of this evening, several pieces rather, is the Année de Pèlerinage, which he wrote 3 volumes of short piano pieces called The Years of Pilgrimage. And the first group is Swiss, and the second group is Italy. And the third group, and we're going to hear 3 of those later, is Nothing. And I mentioned that he was a traveler, so he was used to already traveling all over the world, the European world. He never came to the United States or South America, in carriages to play and perform for crowned heads and for fans who wanted to hear the Hungarian rhapsodies over and over again. And this set a pattern for his whole life, so that by the end of his life, he's living in 3 places simultaneously. He's in Weimar, where he had finished one stint earlier and now came back to become a famous teacher. He's living in Budapest here, where he's invited to become the first director of the Royal Hungarian Conservatory of Music, or whatever title was at that point. And he's most importantly in Rome. I mentioned that in the statue of Liszt here in the park, he's wearing a cassock. That's because he had a second mistress. We don't want to forget about her. This is a woman he met in St. Petersburg, a Polish countess who was married to a Russian count. She was very wealthy. She had her own money, and then they had extensive lands in the Ukraine. So that was a marriage. It's very similar to Marie's marriage to her husband, which was effectively just a business arrangement. So she took one look at Liszt and immediately invited him to come and visit her at her estate somewhere down in the Ukraine. And that began what was the second great long affair of his life. He breaks up with Marie. He gives up being a performing pianist. He quits. He's only in his late 30s by the time he just says, that's it, I'm done. Partly because the new Countess, Princess Caroline Stein-Wittgenstein, wants him to be a composer. And she thinks his real destiny is to be a composer and not to just wow audiences. Now, partly this was sexual jealousy because women constantly threw themselves at him. Constantly. He was Sinatra before Sinatra. He was the Beatles before the Beatles. Heinrich Heine, the great poet, coined the term Listomania. And Ken Russell made a movie about it, in fact, which is quite an extravaganza if you ever have a chance to see it. It's something starring Roger Daltrey of The Who as Franz Liszt. So he unites this whole notion of rock stardom with Liszt himself. So Liszt takes up with the Countess, and then they want to get married. They almost get married on Liszt's 50th birthday, which would have been in 1861. She had to go through hoops. The Russian government didn't want to lose that money. The Orthodox Church was giving them trouble about getting an annulment so that she could marry Liszt in the Catholic Church in Rome. And they had the church picked out. They had everything ready to go. Liszt was personal friends with the Pope. But at the last minute, the Vatican Curia decided not to approve her annulment. So that Liszt and Caroline were left literally at the altar. And that was the end of that relationship. They never lived together after that. She took up rooms in Rome. He took up his own place. He lived in the Vatican for a while. He lived at the Villa d'Este in Tivoli, east of Rome. And we'll hear a piece about that. And he lived at the Santa Francesca Romana Church, the one that's right between the Colosseum and the Roman Forum. And he wore a cassock. He became a priest partly. He took 4 of the 7 holy orders, one of which is exorcist. A lifelong Catholic, I didn't know that all priests are exorcists too, but that's something apparently they do. The cassock didn't keep the girls away. However, luckily, Liszt was able to keep his love life functioning. But he began to turn inward. He was very religious. So his Odyssey, as we've titled this tonight, is this pull between God and mammon. He himself felt it. He said, I'm half Magyar, half artist, half priest. He felt himself bifurcated, and he lived this vie trifurquée. So he went from Weimar to Rome to Budapest, and that was the last 20 years of his life. He just kept making that particular circle. So much of the music we're going to hear later is from that period. But this is the very first piece in the Année de Pèlerinage, one of my favorites. It's called the Chapel of William Tell. There is a chapel on a lake in Switzerland dedicated to William Tell and the whole Swiss patriotic movement. And this gets key about Liszt and Wagner, which is they're both political revolutionaries. They're both caught up in freedom. In Lyon, apparently, there was a big workers' strike at one point, and Liszt wrote a youthful piece called Lyon, which he later revised to show his support for the workers at Lyon. He was a passionate advocate of Hungarian freedom, tremendously so. He got into trouble on multiple occasions when he would play the Rákóczi March here during the Austro-Hungarian Empire period, and that was considered a revolutionary thing to do, that it was agitating on behalf of Hungarian independence. So independence is very important. Therefore, the very first piece in the Année de Pèlerinage Suisse is the Chapel of William Tell. You're going to hear sort of hymnal music, and then you'll hear the martial trumpets calling the Swiss to arms. This is not the episode in which William Tell shoots the arrow off the apple off his son's head. It's the big fight with the Austrians later on. Then you'll hear the battle, and then you'll hear this quiet close, but still this distant call of the trumpets saying that freedom is never free, and it must be fought for in every generation. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's young Liszt, the revolutionary, the romantic, the mixture of religious and martial, all the complex aspects of his character are seen right from the very, very first piece of the Année de Pèlerinage. So to conclude the first half, I'm going to play one non-Liszt piece. This is by Wagner, but it ties in with our theme. As I mentioned, Wagner became Liszt's son-in-law. And the way he became Liszt's son-in-law is that he impregnated Liszt's daughter on several occasions while she was inconveniently married to her first husband, Hans von Bülow. So you see, this is kind of a theme that runs through the family. I just figured if it was good enough for Dad, it's good enough for me. So Cosimo was married to a very famous pianist and conductor named Hans von Bülow, one of Liszt's prize pupils. They had some children together, but she met Wagner. She took up with Wagner. And the rest is history. She had several children with Wagner while she's still married to von Bülow, which caused von Bülow a great deal of public embarrassment. Because he was so devoted to Wagner's music, he was conducting Wagner's music. I think in retrospect, Wagner was probably one of the worst people who ever lived. He is ungrateful. He seduces his patrons' wives routinely. He exploits the men who continue to give him money even after he seduced their wives, which is only in the 19th century could that happen. And in this case, this is exactly what the origin of this piece is. It's a 15-minute sonata. It's dedicated to Mathilde Wesendonck. And those of you who know Wagner know that he also wrote some songs called the Wesendonck Lieder. Well, Wesendonck, Mr. Wesendonck, was a wealthy man with a house in Switzerland. And as Wagner was fleeing the German authorities, he took the house next door to the Wesendoncks. Young Mrs. Wesendonck was very beautiful. You'll see pictures of her all over the Wagner house in Bayreuth. This whole room dedicated to her. Strikingly beautiful woman. And Wagner conceived this mad passion for her. And whether it was requited or not, we're not 100% sure. But we can guess, can't we, knowing these people? I find this piece interesting not because Wagner's a great piano writer. He's not. He mostly, well, almost exclusively, he's entirely known for the music dramas, big orchestral works. But this is interesting because Wagner's early music is sort of mock Beethoven sonatas. He's clearly a young composer trying out, get a feel for what his style is going to be. But by the time he writes this, he's not only having this affair with Mathilde Wesendonck, but he's starting to write Tristan and Isolde. And that's the great erotic opera of all time. And everything that Wagner's feeling, this passion for this woman, and the whole sort of joy of it, illicit relationships, well, that's what Tristan is about, isn't it? Exactly what it's about. So you'll hear some pre-Tristan figurations in this sonata. You'll also hear, for me, echoes of Tannhäuser, the Pilgrim's Chorus, for example. The sonata's in A-flat. It opens very similar to a Beethoven sonata, also in A-flat, which every pianist plays. The first movement is a theme and variations in A-flat. Wagner steals that. Wagner stole everything. He stole your wife, he stole your money, he stole your house. With Liszt, he stole Liszt's music. He would literally take a Liszt theme, including the famous Tristan chord, and use it without attribution. At the end of his life, Wagner died before Liszt, a couple of years before Liszt. So Liszt got his revenge. And in his pieces he wrote to commemorate, or maybe celebrate, Wagner's death, he grotesquely mocks, in my ears, the main theme from Parsifal, Wagner's last sort of sacred opera. So the relationship between the two men is highly fraught, highly fraught. But this is the younger Wagner, and this is his ode to his love for Mathilde Wesendonck. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
The program was a bit of a genesis from the fact that Mr. Walsh, who is also a novelist, into being a fabulous piano player, he's working on a novel in which Liszt is one of the central characters. And also tonight in the audience, I did want to recognize the renowned Hungarian cinematographer and director, Lajos Koltai. Mr. Koltai, thank you for coming. And now we begin.
I mentioned at the end of his life, Liszt was living in 3 places: Budapest, Weimar, and Germany, and Rome. And while in Rome, I also mentioned he had apartments at the Vatican, Santa Francesca Romana, and most importantly, he had access to the Villa d'Este, which was owned by the Cardinal Hohenlohe, who was a good friend of Liszt, German cardinal. So he wrote a number of pieces there and about there. He also loved to listen to the sounds around him, like most musicians do. And the first piece I'm going to play is the first piece of Book 3 of the Année de Pèlerinage. I'm skipping over Italy because it's way too hard for me to learn these at 76 years old. So I'll try it for next year. But right now we're going directly to the spiritual part of Liszt's journey. This is now the Abbé Liszt. He has the title of Abbé. He's got 4 of the holy orders. He is friends with the Pope. He's friends with major cardinals. And he's fascinated by the sound of bells. One of Liszt's most famous showpieces is La Campanella, the little bell. It's very, very difficult to play, so I'm not going to try it. But this bells piece we can handle, and it's called Angelus, Prière aux Anges Gardiens, Prayer to the Guardian Angels. And it's Liszt's dedication to his daughter, Blondine. I mentioned he had 3 kids. 2 of them died young. Well, Blondine died in her early 20s after giving birth to her only child, who was named Daniel, after her late younger brother, who had died as a teenager. Blondine was very beautiful. She took after her mother, particularly, and was renowned. And her husband later became Prime Minister of France. So she married very well. And this is his impression of the bells. If you've been in Rome, you know that the bells ring, and they ring kind of off, and they conflict with each other, and they make this wonderful racket. So this is Liszt's interpretation of the bell ringers kind of not quite in harmony with each other. remember this key. That's E major. And that's all you're going to hear for the rest of the night, is because E major for Liszt represented spirituality. It represented the otherworldliness, sacred. It's always a sacred key for him. So in that case, it's the bells of the church. The second piece, which also comes from Book 3 of Ane, is called The Cypresses of the Villa d'Este. It's called a threnody, so it's sorrowful. He wrote two of them, Cypress 1 and Cypresses 2. Cypresses 2 is my favorite. He also wrote a piece called The Fountains of the Villa d'Este, which is one of his last great virtuosic works. And as I've mentioned, Liszt is throwing a spear into the future. Without the Fountains of the Villa d'Este, you won't have Ravel, Ondine, for example, in Ravel's suite. You don't have Debussy, Jodot. You don't have any of this French music that comes after Liszt, illustrating the play of water. He sees it, he hears it, he writes it out, and then all the composers who come after him have to go back to that original, to make a pun, source, right? The source of the water. But we're going to hear the Cypresses. This is also in E. I mentioned that Wagner borrowed a lot from Liszt. One of the things he borrowed was Liszt's ability to take the tiniest little four-note sequence and make a whole piece out of it. So, for example, that's going to be the major theme of this entire work, and everything you hear is going to be based on that. Upside down, sideways, inside out. Schoenberg takes this with the 12-tone system and develops the whole thing. 12 notes, one cannot be repeated. And then you play them in reverse order. Then you flip them. So instead of going up a third, they go down a third, etc. And then you flip that. So you have 4 separate rows of 12 notes to build out of. Liszt does it with 4. And you'll hear it in the Cypresses of the Villa d'Este. So picture Liszt, he's out on the balcony of the villa. It's quite a glorious place. And he's watching the cypresses. And if you've been to Italy, I'm sure you have, you know that they're big, tall, sort of skinny trees. And in the wind, they blow like this, very softly. And at the end of this piece, you will actually hear that in music. Thank you very much. I love that piece for lots of reasons, but one of them is that Liszt uses a certain device that becomes familiar with his music as you play it. As you play each composer, you get to know their tricks, so to speak. And what seems really hard at first isn't once you understand that it's a series of patterns, and as long as you reproduce them, you're pretty much safe. This is true of every composer, from Beethoven that I played, for Scott Joplin to Liszt, that they have certain tricks. But one of Liszt's favorite tricks is this cadence, which you heard the thing swaying at the end there, where the music goes from. Well, it's one of his favorite ways to end a piece on a note of uncertainty, and I'm just going to play the very tail end of one of the greatest romantic piano piece ever written in the first book of Anne. It's called The Valet d'Obermann. It's based on a novel by Senancourt, which was very influential at the time. It was about a young man who basically goes, like a hippie, goes off into nature and decides he needs to find himself among the mountains of Switzerland. So that's Obermann's Valley is the title. And so at the end of this particular piece, it's very showy, you get this, and this is 30 years before. Where shall we start? How about with this? That augmented sixth chord. So Liszt uses that as a way to destabilize you, and then famously ends on an E major chord with a doubled third, which you never do, never. It's a no-no, following the rules laid down by Bach. You don't double the third, but Liszt does it because it's unstabilizing. He doesn't want you to find peace in this piece. He wants you to have a question. So that's going to come back. We just heard it in the Cypresses piece. Now for a little something different. Liszt wrote 4 Mephisto waltzes. The famous one is first. That's really hard. Then he wrote 2 and 3. And then at the end of his life, he wrote 4, and he didn't finish it. So I've taken the liberty of finishing it for him. I hope he doesn't mind. This was written in the last year of his, full year of his life, in 1885. So you all know Faust by Goethe. It's the waltz scene from that, immortalized in story, song, the statues in Germany. So imagine dancing with the devil. Lots of fun to monkey around with one of your favorite composers. Now, I should mention we almost share a birthday. Liszt is born on October 22nd. My birthday is October 23rd, which is also a great Hungarian holiday, national holiday. So I think that Hungary should celebrate both our birthdays together. I'm just passing that on to Prime Minister Orban. The last piece is also in E, and it's called Sursum Corda, which is from the Mass. It means lift up your hearts. I mentioned that Liszt was always struggling with between the sacred and the profane, between the flesh and the spirit. He has that kind of Catholic bifurcated guilt in which he indulges in one and then repents in the other. And Sursum Corda is the last of the Année de Pèlerinage. It's his last thing he has to say about his own spiritual journey that started with the William Tell Chapel. And it's one of the oddest pieces ever written. It is in E, and you will hear that note sounded in almost every measure of the piece. So no matter what harmony changes over it, that E is never going to go away. And that's the rock of his faith. Whether you think this ends happily or unhappily is up for you to decide. But Sursum Corda. Lift up your hearts. much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. One more piece in honor of the man whose house this is. I know you all know this. This is the last of the 6 Romanian dances, Hungarian dances. That was the last of those 6 Romanian dances. Bartók wrote it for piano and wrote it for orchestra, so you have it in both. In both iterations, anyway, it's tons of fun.